On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use, welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 12, created on April 5th, 2022. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, everyone. I am drinking a Monument Northbound Nobu IPA. It's a hazy IPA that is from the great charm city of Baltimore.
All right, and I'm having a gin and juice for my cold. It's called an Aviation, so good for you.
And I put together the classic recipe of vodka, Kahlua, and cream, which I've been told we are now calling a white Ukrainian. In the movie The Big Lebowski, though, the dude just simply calls it a Caucasian, if you will. All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. Some of the things we're going to look at tonight, hey, it's the off season, so we're going to talk about some other things going on, like the world's largest trivia contest. We'll talk about a trip to Argentina. We've got professional soccer coming to Lambeau Field. We'll have a guest contributor tonight. Another podcaster will be joining us. Then there's our Packer Player of the Past, as well as our Packer History Update. And then Jeff and I have an update on one of the great staple restaurants in the city of Green Bay. We'll be talking about what could be the fate of Chili John's. All right, gentlemen, so near and dear to my heart is the world's largest trivia contest. That is held annually. What's that, Jeff?
Really?
Yeah.
Don, I've never heard about this. You've got to explain it for us.
What?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I'm not talking about the tailgate party, I'm talking about the world's largest trivia contest.
Well, that was, by the way, one of my talking notes. Is John a bigger whore for the trivia contest or for lot one? Because I think it is an open question.
Boy, that reminds me.
We have to throw breaking news into here, Neil, that it will not be the lot one tailgate party for next season. It will be lot 9. We're going to be in lot 9 on the south side of Lambeau Field, and we'll talk more about that later, when we get into training camp and things like that. All right, the world's largest trivia contest is held annually at the campus of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. It's put on by the campus radio station, 90 FM WWSP, and they do a big contest that used to bring in well over 10,000 people to play. It's been a little bit less than that lately, but we can expect about 300 to 400 teams to play in the world's largest trivia contest. It is a contest that runs 54 hours long. Starts Sunday night, this coming Sunday, April 8th, starts at 6 p.m., goes all the way till midnight Sunday, 54 hours, 8 questions an hour. And all you do is you just keep getting questions and calling in your answers. And for those of you who are interested, if you want to find out more about it, you can go to 90fm.org or 90fmtrivia.org online. That's information about trivia. You can also listen to the contest online there. And to let you know, I'll be doing some air shifts. Jeff, this is interesting. I calculated this out because we're going to talk about the show that I'm going to do Thursday morning. Thursday morning, the 7th, I'm on the air from 9 a.m. to noon. Friday the 8th, I'm on from 3 to 6. And then Sunday morning, I'm on from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So over 71 hours, I'll have 10 of the 71 hours. That's 14% of the total airtime.
Very good.
It's going to be me. So Thursday morning, I'm doing what's called a Hits Week show. And Jeff, you helped me out with this. We put together, 24 songs. But they're all from Jeff's, almost all from Jeff's collection, 12-inch extended remixes of 80s hits. Jeff, tell me about your fascination with the 80s music and why the extended remixes.
Well, I worked at Musicland for starters. For those of you from Green Bay, Port Plaza Mall, worked there. Also was a frequent visitor to the Exclusive Company. And so, I don't know, just drawn to them, liked the extended mixes. That was a thing then. And I just like to investigate, listen to new music, and I bought a lot of them.
And if you're gonna Google 12-inch singles, be careful what you click on.
Yeah, vinyl singles maybe or something.
That's right. So I'm thankful to Jeff that my music Thursday morning is going to be coming from his collection. But like I said, you guys, it is a big contest. This is the 52nd year of the world's largest trivia contest. It's called Trivia 52, the stacked deck, like a deck of cards. The last couple of years we had to play virtually because of our pandemic. And this is the first time since 2019 that they're actually having people back in Stevens Point going into the radio station, playing in certain locations, things like that they do throughout the weekend. So it is a big event that we're getting people in. And the two primary authors of the contest, Jim Olive and John Eckendorf, two guys who have been doing this for over 30 years, the two writers, they are retiring. This is their last trivia contest. So the reins of writing the contest are being handed over to my friend Dave Colthurst. Dak is what everybody calls him. So that's a kind of a big thing for a lot of longtime trivia players as well. It's kind of the changing of the guard. So to celebrate the world's largest trivia contest, gentlemen, I have some trivia questions for you.
All
so
right, let's go.
We could do this like Jeopardy style or whatever, just blurt it out if you think you know the answer. All right. First question. Based on the theme song to a classic TV sitcom, what is the first and last name of the television character who was described as the youngest one in curls? Do I have to sing it? Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. The youngest one in curls. Was
with the Brady Bunch.
Yep. What was her name? Who was the youngest one in curls?
I've watched the show about 3 times, so we're just going to call it Marcia by definition.
No, it was
Jan.
No, the started with an S.
You literally had a 33% chance of getting it right, Neil, and you failed twice.
and I don't know who the third one is off the top of my head.
It starts with an S, right?
No, it starts with a C. Cindy Brady.
Oh,
Cindy Brady. You guys blew that one.
Yeah, that's because nobody cared about the youngest one, right?
All right. This one is a classic question from the world's largest trivia contest. One of my favorite ones. They kind of word it differently, but I'm gonna make it a little bit easier for you guys to figure out. But
thanks.
What are the first names of the 5 performing Marx Brothers?
Harpo,
you got one. Groucho, good.
Yeah, I got Groucho. That's it. So we'll call it Oscar, Big Bird, and Snuffleupagus.
Neil, I know your mother is watching this, trying to yell the answer at you.
Groucho, Harpo,
Chico. Groucho, Harpo, Chico. A lot of people pronounce it Chico because it's Chico, but he's Chico. And then the two that you really don't see a lot in the movies, Zeppo and Gummo. The story behind why he's called Chico, back in the vaudeville days when the Marx Brothers took the show on the road, every time they went to a new town, it was his job to kind of go into the town because he had that kind of swarthy, dark Italian look about him. And it was his job to find where all the chicks were for after the show. So they called him Chico. Hey, Jeff, here's an easy one for you. What do you call a female peacock? Neil, if you're gonna laugh like that,
we can't say that on the end air, can we?
Well, the true answer is a peahen.
Let's leave it at that. And there's the George Carlin answer to that question.
Yes, there is.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, I'm going to test your retention skills. Jeff and I got together and we spend a lot of time talking about movies. What I told Jeff is after our conversation, I said, I realize I watch a lot of movies. All right, Jeff, here you go.
Yeah, you do.
All right. In 1972, The Godfather won the Oscar for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
In 1974, The Godfather Part 2 won the Oscar for Best Picture. What was the movie sandwiched in the middle in 1973 that won Best Picture?
We talked about this at the 1919 bar, didn't we?
Yeah.
See, I remember that.
I'm going to call it One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
No, that was 75.
Not a bad guess, but you're off by a couple of years, Neil.
Yeah, it was 75.
1973. And it was the second time that these two actors and the director, George Roy Hill, got together for a movie.
It wasn't All the President's Men.
No.
That was 73. God.
So not Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but it was Redford, Newman.
The Sting?
The Sting. There we go, Jeff. Good job. All right.
That was easy.
All right. How about a sports question? You guys like sports?
No, we hate them. That's why we're doing a podcast.
All right. There is
Lay it on us, Johnny. Come on.
All right. College football. There is a annual college football game.
It's college football sports. I mean, come on.
Yes. Annual college football game.
Student athletes. Come on.
What are the names of the two colleges that compete in a regular season game where the trophy is Floyd of Rosedale?
Oh, come on.
Jeff, come on.
Neil? I know it off the top of my head. So
no, I had no idea.
Floyd was a champion pig from the Iowa State Fair.
It's a
The
huge
first
ass
contest-
trophy too.
The first contest, they won the actual pig, but then they made a trophy of it. Jeff, you one of the schools is very close to you.
Yes, it would be the University of Minnesota and University of Iowa.
There you go. Jeff got one right. All right, Neil, here's the softball that I put together for you. Are you ready?
Probably not,
Neil,
but go ahead.
Neil, what is the name of the indie rock band whose self-titled debut album featured a song all about the Oxford comma?
Vampire Weekend. I've seen
Yeah.
it. But who gives a
We
fuck
end on a
about
high
it?
note.
So
Good job, you guys.
We're on a roll.
And when our guest gets on, I have a trivia question saved for him. So we'll move on.
All right.
Neil is back in town. He went south of the equator for the first time in his life. Neil, tell us about Argentina.
yeah, so I spent 10 days celebrating turning 50, even though that was in March of 2020, going to Argentina, and spent time in Bariloche, spent time in the Andes, and it was an incredible trip. I mean, it was something that was planned as, you know, a place where there's a celebration of wine and food, and that was certainly what I had. The steaks are certainly renowned, and the different types of chimichurri sauces and all that's like they make an art of meat. And, you know, the first meal that we had in Buenos Aires was really a component of that, where we had 9 different meats as part of the meal, including some sweetbreads and some blood sausage and some other things that we'll probably discuss to a lot of sensitive people. But it was an incredible experience, and it included things such as getting to choose your own knife for the steaks. And that was something that we brought back. We actually came back with 6 different knives. So next time you guys are out here, we'll certainly have to have steak and have steak with the Argentine
Do you have
knives.
to declare those at customs?
So customs is not as rigorous as it used to be. So it is technically
Walk on the plane with them?
Weaponry. No, you cannot put them in your carry-on. That's for sure. But they clearly, you know, sent them through. They were steak knives rather than knives. They're not guns of any sort. So that was clearly not a problem. You know, they send everything through X-rays. But couple of takeaways that I had from the trip. One was the incredible quality and diversity of the street art in Buenos Aires, especially, but also in other cities throughout Argentina. It is a thing for people to take their building fronts, and instead of it being one bland, boring color, they paint some sort of, you know, they hire an artist and paint some sort of mural over the front of the building. And this was something that was present throughout Buenos Aires. And it was certainly one of my highlights of the trip, was essentially just walking down the street and seeing all of the different types of street art. Highlight number 2, obviously beyond the steak, was the wine. And so obviously we know that the wine is great in Argentina, but let me tell you, it is better in Argentina than it is here, because there's only a small amount of Argentine wine that is shipped here, and the things that they keep behind, which is my general opinion of most winemaking regions, is better than what they ship elsewhere. And so, you know, basically every restaurant, it was all, you know, a selection of, you know, 30 to 100 or 200 Argentine wines. We did a couple wine tastings, and you know, from different regions that you just can't find in the United States. I absolutely adored the wine, and that's something that's going to be a future trip to Argentina, is just go to the different winemaking regions, plural. Mendoza, well known here, but you know, there are a series of different regions, and they're all something that's interesting. We were out in the Andes for part of the trip, and one of the things that I learned in the Andes was that there's a classical road that goes the entire length of Argentina. So Argentina is actually the 8th largest country by area in the world, and you'll note that it's very north-south. And so there's a highway called Ruta 40, Route 40, that goes essentially the entire length of Argentina on the edge of the Andes. And this is one of these classic road trip drives, and it has now become a bucket list item for me to do the Ruta 40 as a drive. We drove on about 300 kilometers out of over 5,000 kilometers that were there. So, you know, that was overall, and, you know, so we're in the Andes, you know, went on in the Lake District, the Ruta de los Siete Lagos. So you basically go through a whole series of mountain towns and mountain roads that are just mountains right up against the lake. things that, we saw a volcano, a 12,000 foot volcano that was at the border. It was just incredibly beautiful. If you're into mountain climbing, or if you're into ice climbing, such as our friend Steve, it's something that is very popular down there. Steve has done guiding down in the Bariloche area, but it's an area that I definitely want to return to, as far as both Buenos Aires and going back into the Lake District in the mountains and going into the Andes. It was a gorgeous area. I will say that there were two complaints that I had about Argentina. So when you travel, you realize that there are certain countries where when planes land, it lands and you get off the plane and nobody knows anything better. And then there's certain countries where you clap when the plane lands. And I regret to inform you that Argentina is one of the countries where people clap when the plane lands. It is always disconcerting that happens. It happens in a number of small to mid-sized European countries, and Argentina joins that. And specifically when we landed in the domestic flights, where there's basically almost all people from Argentina, it was pretty raucous on the landing as far as people being happy. I don't know what it's like to be a pilot there, to think that your compatriots don't have confidence you're actually going to land safely, but nonetheless,
is it that are they happy to be home, or is it just because
it's in both directions? You're going out in either directions, right? You're clapping in either direction, and I've never understood the concept, and I certainly have a little bit of judgment for every place that claps when planes land. But Argentina is one of those countries. It was one of these small components. There was one other element of Argentina that was, I would say, interesting and challenging. So we flew into Buenos Aires, and we're taking the cab into our hotel. And as we're driving in, I'm sort of noticing that, okay, so there are a lot of intersections that have traffic lights, and that's all good. And then there are a lot of intersections where, people just sort of slow down at the intersection, or maybe don't, and go right through it. And so I would say that intersections that don't have traffic lights, the vast majority of them don't have anything. There's no stop sign in one direction. There's no yield sign in one direction. Sometimes you get a yield in one direction, but a lot of times it's just complete gas. You go and cars approach the intersection, and whatever happens, happens. And there's very much a might makes right component that you get in the intersection. If you're there first, you're going to win, and you keep going through. And this was true in Buenos Aires. It was true in Bariloche. It was true in a number of the other towns in the Andes Mountains that I went to. This is the style of Argentine driving in urban areas if there's not a traffic light. And John, I know you have opinions about rotaries or roundabouts or traffic circles, or whatever you want to do in Wisconsin, and how chaotic those can be, despite the fact that those are incredibly ordered. Can you imagine what driving without any control whatsoever would be like in Wisconsin?
Well, you said might makes right, Neil. It's not necessarily being the first one; it's being the biggest. If you got a big ass truck, you get to go through every intersection, don't you?
Trash is a crash. A truck costs money, right? I mean, it's just whoever gets there first, they're going through, and it was just that as we're driving in the first time, I couldn't believe it. And then we rented a car and we're out in the Andes, and it's like, okay, I got to figure this out as far as when can I go, and the pedestrian is the same thing. It's like the cars are just going to go when they go. So
that was my next question. Not just pedestrian traffic, but what about handicapped pedestrian traffic? If you're confined to a wheelchair or you're on crutches, what the hell do you do?
It is an excellent question, and sometimes there would be pauses in view of the pedestrians, but there were certainly plenty of taxi drivers that basically said, yeah, I'm just going to get through this pedestrian, I'm going to honk, and they've got to get out of the way, and that's the way it is. It was definitely an interesting driving experience. It was not as aggressive. I've been in more aggressive driving, things that actually scared me, like when I've been in Portugal or in Italy, I've actually been scared by the drivers. I wasn't really scared by the drivers. They clearly are all very conscientious about other drivers being there, but there's also I'm going to go where I can go, and that's the way it's going to be.
So Neil, on your trip, what was the most unexpected, pleasant thing that happened, or positive thing?
The most unexpected component, I was not ready for the level of the street art, just globally. I would also say that all of the transit within Argentina was incredible. We went on the subways, we went on domestic flights. Obviously, international flights are a different story, but the people in Argentina were incredibly friendly. My Spanish is marginal to okay, and they certainly were very accommodating with me whether they spoke English or not. They were certainly happy to help me along, and I thought that it was one of the friendliest countries that I've ever visited overall, as far as the people really being outgoing. You know, people have said that Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America, and the comment is that, well, it's a much friendlier version than Paris ever has a chance of being.
Yeah.
So one of the movies that I mentioned earlier, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, in the movie, Butch keeps telling Sundance, you know, we should get out of here where they were in the Old West. Let's go to Bolivia. Let's go to Bolivia. And in the movie, they end up in Bolivia, which is where they do end up in real life. And, you know, for the purposes of brevity and making it a 2-hour movie, that's where they send them. But in real life, after traveling to New York City, Butch, Sundance, and Sundance's wife, Etta Place, they actually traveled to Buenos Aires and spent like 5 to 7 years in Buenos Aires before eventually making their way north to Bolivia, robbing banks along the way.
I could certainly see living in Argentina for 5 to 7 years. That was very pleasant lifestyle there.
Now you showed a lot of pictures of the cemeteries. I'm sure there's a lot of great history there. Like in the United States, we have a lot of great folklore about our Old West. Did you run into any of that? Did they point out any? Did you hear anyone mention Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
There was no reference to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, although we did not spend any time in Las Pampas and sort of the big gaucho areas of Argentina. Mm-hmm. But there was definitely, you could feel the edges of the gaucho culture. There was this reverence for certainly for beef in general, for the farming in general, but especially for the cowboy mentality. There's definitely a very cowboy spirit in a lot of Argentina. And even though it's a country of only 45 million and most of them live in cities, it's definitely a country that celebrates its cowboy heritage, much like the United States does its American West.
And Neil, I'm also wondering, while you were in Argentina, did you take in any sports? Specifically soccer, because we have to talk about soccer coming to Lambeau Field in Manchester City and Bayern.
I wanted to so badly. I mean, the Argentine culture for football is incredible. And, you know, we went down to La Boca, region of Buenos Aires, that is where the most famous team of the Argentine league is, Boca Juniors. It is where La Bombonera is. The atmosphere at La Bombonera is considered to be the greatest atmosphere in sports as far as the intensity of the fan experience. They did play a game our last night there. Unfortunately, it was a game that was 9:00 at night, and that is not a safe time for a foreigner to be going down to La Boca. But we went down into that area during daylight hours, and certainly there's a celebration of Lionel Messi. There's a celebration of Diego Maradona. You see Diego Maradona and Leo Messi represented on the artwork everywhere. There are statues of them. Pope Francis, as well, as another thing. You see this real celebration of those World Cup wins by Maradona, especially. And absolutely, there's this great feel of soccer that comes through, even if you're not at a match. There's no doubt that it is one of the great countries in the world as far as its sports love, and specifically towards football. And you can sense that in the towns.
And talking about soccer or football, I think it was either right after you left or just before you left, it was announced that they were bringing professional soccer to Lambeau Field. Neil, my first question to you is, who are we going to root for?
So it's a match between Bayern Munich and Manchester City. So teams from the Bayern Munich is the dominant team of the Bundesliga. Man City is certainly one of the most dominant teams the last 15 years in the English Premier League. And so it is a very difficult question who you should root for. So Bayern Munich is by far the most dominant team in German soccer. They win the titles basically every year. It's sort of like if you take the Yankees from the 50s and 60s and then never leave the 50s and 60s, as far as you just assume that Bayern's going to win everything every year, and every now and then somebody else wins. So Bayern has this incredibly supportive fan base. I don't have anything specific against the Bayern fans, other than the fact that it's a monopoly that makes German soccer boring. And I sort of root against these teams that are part of national leagues where there's one team and then a bunch of essentially minnows below them. They're not all minnows, but the Bundesliga is not a very competitive league. Back in the summer of 2020, there was a period where the Bundesliga was playing and none of the other soccer leagues were playing. And I watched the Bundesliga for about 4 weeks, and that was 4 weeks that was enough as far as I'm concerned. So I'm generally against Bayern Munich, except for the fact that they're playing against Man City. And so Man City is a team from England that they're currently at the top of the Premier League. They have won a lot of Premier League titles over the last few years. Their manager is a really interesting guy, Pep Guardiola. But they're owned by one of the Gulf oil magnates, one of the Gulf oil states, actually. And so imagine, taking, say, the Los Angeles Angels or some, Jacksonville Jaguars or some relatively unsuccessful team, and then having them be bought out by, let's take the LA Angels, being bought out by a repressive regime that's in the Middle East that then decides that they're going to spend $1 billion a year on salary for their teams, something that's way above every other team. And, there's this fundamental sports washing as far as this is their concern. So just like Roman Abramovich for Chelsea, Man City's owners and PSG's owners in France, all are basically using their wealth to buy titles, to buy teams that are incredibly competitive despite no history of that level of competitiveness, and then using that to allow people to cheer, because it's on their jerseys, to cheer for their incredibly repressive state. And so as far as I'm concerned, Man City is exactly what is wrong with sport. It's exactly what's wrong with soccer. And so fundamentally, I would be reluctantly cheering for Bayern Munich, although I would probably go to Lambeau Field and wear an Arsenal jersey and go with the Green Bay Armory crowd that are planning on going to the game at Lambeau. And it's certainly an incredible experience to go to Lambeau to watch two of the greatest. There's no question, they're two of the greatest teams in soccer.
Yeah, they do have an Arsenal fan club. They're in Green Bay, and I think they even posted that they were upset that you're coming to a city where there actually is a fan club for a foreign soccer team. Why not bring that team in? It was a valid question. What are the colors, though? I think that for Packer fans who know nothing about it, what are the colors for these two teams? Are either of them close to green that people would say, hey, I'm wearing green to this game?
No, so Bayern Munich, so one of the things that's interesting about soccer culture is it's something that the United States teams have remarkably not picked up on, is that the soccer teams in Europe all basically have a home jersey, an away jersey, and then a third kit, which they sort of use whenever, and they're all new every single year. There's essentially a completely new set of 3 jerseys every single year for every soccer team, and so there are fans that will buy these things every year, and so it's they're all, of course, on themes, but the dominant color for Bayern Munich is red. The dominant color for Man City is this very light blue type color. It's just a light blue color.
Like Charger blue?
Charger blue, very close to Charger blue, but not as elegant as Charger blue, because I like Charger blue. But yes, very close to that. And so yes, there's nothing about the colors even that should cause you to choose one of the two teams. Just choose being against City because you're choosing against repression in the world, and repression being used, oil money being used to hide that repression.
Do you think that Lambeau Field will get sold out for this match?
That's a great question. It's going to depend on how many people are coming up from other places. I mean, I hope it's a match that's at like 1 PM, so it encourages day trippers to come from Milwaukee and Chicago and Madison. Obviously, we've talked about, as far as the draft, the challenge is if people have to stay overnight. And so the hope is, it's a 1 PM game, noon game, something like that will cause people to come from all over, because certainly Bayern Munich has fans everywhere. They certainly have a very passionate fan base that extends all over the globe. Man City has basically bought a fan base, despite not having a large number of fans in Manchester. I use Los Angeles Angels as the analog because they stand in the shadow of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that's very much the situation of Man City compared to Manchester United, or also to nearby Liverpool, and that they're a very, very small fish as far as the fans who are from that area. But because of their success, they've brought in a lot of international fans that are just drawn to success. But I think that there's an incredible group of stars that's at Man City. Pep Guardiola as a manager plays very attractive football. I really like Pep Guardiola as a manager. And so I think that it will draw a good number of people just because those are two great teams, even though it will be a preseason game and the teams will very much treat it as a preseason game.
So question, why was Lambeau chosen? Do we know?
I don't have an answer. I haven't done any reading as far as that's concerned. Honestly, if I were Man City, they have done a lot to try to connect themselves to various American fan bases. And I've mentioned the whole concept of sport washing, the fact that they're using sports to hide what the owners are doing, and connecting it to a wholesome team like the Packers, to me seems like something that is very much in Man City's MO. For Bayern Munich, I don't know specifically. Obviously Wisconsin is one of the most Germanic states in the country, however, and the Bundesliga has been less successful than the Premier League and less successful than the Spanish La Liga as far as attracting fans in the United States. And this mainly because of the lack of competitiveness in the Bundesliga compared to those other leagues. But I can imagine that, just as the United States is expanding in football and their biggest fan bases are in Germany and the Czech Republic, the German Soccer Federation can see there is potential for those same people for the same attractions of German ancestry people to cheer for Bayern Munich. And I can imagine that there's a component of that trying to build the Bundesliga in the United States will start out with one of the most German states in the country.
Jeff, I would even contend that this is probably a type of a dry run or a type of a trial run, excuse me, as I've got something there going, a trial run to see how does the infrastructure handle an event where 90% of the people are coming from, are non-local,
transient,
away. How will the hotels and the Airbnbs and everything else from literally Marinette to Milwaukee and even Chicago handle this? So hey, great. I'm all for it. I'd love to see it because you guys know I'm on the record that I just don't think Green Bay could do the draft, let alone a Super Bowl. But an event like this will certainly test the waters. Well, that means we'll get the tailgate party, but that'll give us a good practice run for the tailgate party.
You were just complaining earlier that lot 9 is you've got to have something that's going to be starting it out. So that seems like a good situation for lot 9. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Both the teams are great. As I said, the nature of preseason for European soccer, for world soccer, is that they will play starters who are there. Some of the stars won't show up until late. But they'll play everyone. They'll play, and they'll have events otherwise. And I think that's sort of the, getting to your question about logistics. Both of those teams are going to want to engage their fan bases, and so likely the day before they play, they're going to have an event at Lambeau Field for just the fans of Bayern Munich, and something that's going to attract thousands of people who are fans of each of those individual teams. And it's possible that in case of Bayern and City, they'll do those in Milwaukee or Chicago, and then do the actual game in Green Bay. I don't know the details, but it is very much these traveling overseas events are things that all of these soccer teams do to build their global brands, right? They'll go to the United States one year, they'll go to Asia one year as far as a tour. They'll, in the big years, they'll stay where there's a summer tournament, they'll stay home. But fundamentally, this is how they're all building their global brand. And this is something that the United States American football needs to think about as far as building on as well, that, we do this NFL Europe, but the Super Bowl is about 1/6 to 1/8 of the total number of viewers as the Champions League final is. And it's even less than, it's even a smaller fraction compared to a World Cup. And so, building the brand is something that they certainly do. I'm an Arsenal member. I'm an actual member of the Arsenal Football Club. And, this is something that you don't have that equivalent thing for American football. And I can see certainly, especially these types of tours happening for U.S. teams in the future.
And Neil, while you were gone, it was announced that Green Bay will not get the NFL draft in 2024. It is going to Detroit.
Just a little bit more time until we get your fantasy situation, John, of complete chaos and traffic that Green Bay has not seen ever, that every other city deals with.
And trying to figure out where all the poop is going to go when they flush all the toilets for all those people. And we brought someone in with us to talk about not only the Packers draft and where that's going and maybe soccer at Lambeau Field, but anything Packer related. So we have a guy, he's got some roots in Green Bay. He happens to be living in Michigan now. We won't hold that against him, but JJLahey has a couple of podcasts out there. So JJ, thanks for joining us. Tell us about your podcast first. Where can people find you?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me on here. First time being on this show, and I'm excited to talk to you guys. Yeah, I host two podcasts, Cheese and Packers on the Packernet Podcast Network. Super awesome endeavor that we're putting together over there at Packernet. And then also I host No Huddle Radio with the infamous Gil Martin over on PackersTalk. So that's two fantastic organizations I get to be a part of, and love every minute of it. So if the good folks listening to me today have any desire to hear other thoughts that I have, those two shows, Cheese and Packers and No Huddle Radio, on any podcasting app out there.
Now, we found you on Twitter. That's where we've connected with you. So what's your Twitter handle, and what other social media are you out there on?
Yeah, I am exclusively on Twitter. I don't have time for anything else because I pour so much time into Twitter. It's kind of stupid, but at JJLahey, LAHEY, definitely the best place to get in touch with me. I love talking to folks on there, taking questions, spitballing fun Packers topics. Best place to connect with me.
Well, you talk about devoting your time. You've devoted a lot of time coming into the NFL draft. It's something that we probably haven't, so we need your expertise. So tell us what's on your mind here with draft day coming, because there's been a lot going on. And now we have the exciting prospect of having 2 first-round draft picks. We've got 5 in the top 100. Still a lot of trade talk because we need a receiver. JJ, where are you on all this right now?
Yeah, it's a fun draft this year. I kind of last year took a little bit of a break and didn't get super into everything pre-draft last year, but really hit the ground running this year. And the thing I noticed is that although there is certainly some really top end talent in this draft, I think you're looking at maybe just a small handful of like 5 guys in this draft class who are really premium talent. And so the Packers have pick 22 and 28 in the first round. And I kind of view it a little bit of like a no man's land from about pick 20 to like 38. I just don't love that spot. And what I kind of expect the Packers to do is to trade up from 22, just because this is a year where they actually have the ammunition to maybe go up and get one of the better guys who might be available around 10 or 15 or so. Who I just, when I look at the draft picks who are going to be available in the 20s, it really seems like about a really comparable level of talent to what you see in like the 40s and 50s. So I'd like to kind of, if they traded up from 22 and traded back from 28, I'd be super happy. Just because when I look at the guys who are available at 28, I don't see a massive difference between the talent level there and the talent level in, like I said, the 40s and 50s this year. So if you could trade back, so you just had multiple picks in that range, that would be super awesome. But and there's also obviously the possibility that they package together multiple of these picks and really try and go up and get a guy or two really early.
JJ, I've got a question. When you're talking about, this talent gap between sort of the top 15 and the next, you're talking about a best player available. You're not focusing on any one specific position when you're saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of positions like tight end and receiver where I would say it feels like the talent is kind of deep, but not super top heavy. And then when you're looking at like some of the edge rushers and some of the offensive linemen, there are just some freaks out there. Obviously, everybody knows who Aiden Hutchinson is and Ike Ekwonu, just super studs who absolutely deserve to go super early. And I think that the talent at those positions does drop off pretty quickly. I think if you want to grab an edge rusher or an offensive tackle, you're going to kind of have to do it pretty early. When you're looking at say tight end or so, the gap between like my tight end 1 and my tight end 4 or 5 is so small that at any point, if there's like 3 or 4 of those guys still out there, I can't really justify reaching for a tight end, because I feel like in a round or 2 rounds, you're still going to have some tight ends available who are really similar in talent.
So what other positions do you think are deep in that same way?
Tight end is definitely the one that sticks out the most. I think after your first couple of wide receivers, there's a big pile of guys who all have some similar levels of talent to each other. I don't think it's a particularly good wide receiver class. There's some super fun personalities there and some guys who do really excite you, but I think you're looking at like maybe 3 or 4 guys who are really that top end talent. And then after that, it's just kind of a pile of guys that you could grab to be your wide receiver 2 or so. But then you do have to throw in the monkey wrench of, if there is a run on wide receivers, similar to how there's been in free agency, where teams are just crazily overpaying for these receivers, they're probably going to treat them the same way in the draft. And so it might be a situation where if you want a wide receiver, you might have to take them a little bit early, even though they're, compared to some of the previous years, not that great. And so it's a little bit disappointing for this to be a year where the Packers really do need some wide receiver help, because I feel like it's not a fantastic year to be trying to grab wide receivers just with the crazy demand. I think there's a decent supply, but the demand is just absurd. And it's disheartening that the Packers are maybe in that mix where they are one of the more desperate teams for wide receiver, because this could be a year where you might be able to get some really good players at other positions who would fall to you because everybody else is reaching for some of these positions. And maybe you could be looking at a situation where you could be the beneficiary of some desperate team trying to trade some picks to you so they can get where you are and take a receiver. And this year, the Packers might be on the other end of that.
So you mentioned tackle you think is thin. Are other offensive line positions reasonable as far as depth is concerned?
There's
or
a lot of
just sort of a normal situation where the Packers could pick a lineman in the 5th, 6th round, as we often seem to do and do well with,
and get a starter?
Yeah, when it comes to guards, I think there's a lot of guards in this draft class that are pretty decent guards that you can find at a lot of different rounds. I think it's pretty typical to see, all the good tackles get identified and taken pretty early. That's not super uncommon, but looking at the guards, I mean, there's a pile of guards who I think would be really good in like the 3rd and 4th round, no problem. And the Packers always do like to take a lot of swings in like the 5th and 6th round at guard as well. So I would expect them to do that. Definitely, if you're looking at what have the Packers been showing interest in, they brought in 3 wide receivers this week, just in the last like 2 days, to do visits. And you look at the 3 guys they brought in: Tyquan Thornton, George Pickens, and Velus Jones Jr. All 3 of those guys have a lot of talent, and there's a ton of questions around them. Especially like with George Pickens, you got both some medical issues because he's coming off a torn ACL. And you're also looking at, there's like some rumors of like some off the field stuff that we don't know a ton about. I have to imagine the Packers are asking him a lot of questions, really trying to get to the bottom of that. I think that a lot of the time you don't see the Packers bringing in some of those top guys like that for visits. It's a little more typical to have kind of like the Tyquan Thornton type coming in for a visit. And with both of those guys, I think that there's a lot that you can look at to try and ascertain what they're kind of working on. I think George Pickens is a guy that they are seriously considering drafting. There's not a lot of other guys who are similar to him that you could really make comparisons to. And I think that there just are enough questions about him and so much crazy, freakish talent with him that you have to bring him in closer for another look and decide whether you can risk trying to draft him in about the first round, which is, I think, where you'd have to take him if you're the Packers. And then Tyquan Thornton, if you've heard his name, it's probably because for about 10 minutes, it was rumored that he had broken the world record for the fastest 40 time at the combine. And then it turned out it was faulty equipment. He did run a really fast 40 time. It was a 4.28. MVS ran a 4.37. So just to put that in perspective of just how much faster he is than MVS, I think Thornton is a guy that you could look at and say, they probably are interested in him in maybe the third, fourth round, something like that. But also you might just look at the traits he has. He's tall, he's super blazing fast. Maybe they're really interested in Jameson Williams in one of the early rounds, and a guy like Taekwon is maybe your backup plan if Jameson's already gone by the time you're on the clock.
So do you think that Aaron Rodgers has any input with any of these receivers?
I have no idea. I would guess maybe to a small extent. But one thing I've always kind of wished is that he would get asked some questions about some of the college players. I feel like a lot of the time, some of the really smart NFL players, it'd be fun to hear them talk about some college players and kind of who do you have your eye on. But I have absolutely no idea to what extent the Packers front office is including him in the conversations this year.
Yeah, because I mean, historically, we've obviously been through all the drama and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I would think that, he's not going to obviously have the final say by any means, but, okay, what are your thoughts? What plays to Rodgers' strengths as well? And you would think that for these receivers, that would be, a cachet to come to Green Bay and say, okay, yeah, the MVP's throwing to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say, just one kind of note, Amari Rodgers, last year about this time, pretty much publicly asked the Packers to draft him, and they did. And I'll just say, there's a dude, George Pickens, who has said that it would be a dream come true to come play with Aaron Rodgers, that he'd love to come play for the Packers. I just think that's not something you should totally dismiss out of hand. I wouldn't be surprised if they're really interested in taking him.
Where do you see George Pickens falling? I mean, do the Packers need to trade up for him, or is he, somebody we can wait for?
I just don't know. If you're asking me how I assess his talent, I mean, I have him as the third best receiver in this draft. But you hear a lot of scouts talking, you hear, just podcasters and film analysts and draft experts. They're a little bit lower on him, largely because of the injury. I think Bob McGinn had an article on golongtd.com where he was talking about some of the top receivers. And I don't remember him mentioning George Pickens at all in there. As he was talking, his article was conversations he's had with NFL scouts about like who's good. I think it's like the top 50 players in the draft. And I don't recall him mentioning Pickens' name. So of the dozen or so scouts that he talked to in that article, apparently none of them really were felt like mentioning Pickens. So I don't
sometimes that's strategic on the part of scouts if they think they can sneak somebody in that nobody else is seeing.
Yeah, I think the fact that the Packers brought him in for a visit is very telling. Mm-hmm. I think that the odds that he's there with the Packers' second round pick are probably not good. I think that he's almost certainly there with their second first round pick. So somewhere in between 20 and 53 is just where I would guess that he's going to go. But that's based on me just trying to read some tea leaves.
Go back to Neil, because Neil's a lineman. He likes talking linemen. And we know that over the last few years, Packers have found some gems. Elton Jenkins, Royce Newman, right? Even John Runyon, Meyer at center. They are finding linemen who can come in and can play. Yeah. And you talked earlier too, like maybe there's a run on receivers. And if there's a run on receivers and all the receivers go in the first 20 picks, maybe you don't need to trade up or down at 22 and 28. And now you've got the pick of the litter at all these other positions. Is there a safety? Is there a number one safety, a number one lineman, a number one, you mentioned your tight end, but maybe even linebacker that you, in a scenario like that, what would be like your dream? Who would be the awesome person to fall into your lap at 22 in a situation like that?
Yeah, no question. That'd be super fun. I would love to grab just an elite tackle. Trevor Penning, I think, is the guy kind of at the top of my list of like who's realistically possibly going to fall to us. Because I think if you're looking at Ike Ekwonu, Evan Neal, maybe even Charles Cross, I'd be surprised if any of them make it outside of the top like 15 or so. Trevor Penning, and Charles Cross, I think, are the two guys you could say are maybe duking it out for tackle 3 and 4 off the board. But Trevor Penning, I think, would be a really good fit for our team. You look at Bernard Raymond out of CMU. I think he's a good player. You got a couple questions about him just because of the school he goes to and his age and stuff. But I think he's just a really good football player. So I would not hesitate at all if you had a chance at grabbing him. I like him a lot.
What about defensive side of the ball? Defensive line, linebacker, safety. Who's a top prospect in any of those spots?
Top realistic prospect, obviously.
Realistic prospect.
Yeah.
For me, it's got to be all about the edge rushers. Some fantastic edge rushers in this class who I think would just be insane contributors to this defense. It'd be nice to have. We got Preston Smith, we got Rashawn, but you need more than just two. And I think Preston's going to be here for a few years, but you still want to be working on developing that guy who can ultimately take over for Preston. So there's some good guys in this draft. I'm pulling up my list here. These guys I think are all going to be probably gone. You're looking at maybe I think that there's a pretty good chance that Jordan Davis, who's an interior guy, I think there's a decent chance that he's available for either of our first round picks. George Karlaftis, I think, will be there. I'm not super crazy about him. He's a big name and he certainly tore it up in the Big Ten. But as far as being an NFL player, I'm not crazy about him. It's kind of the same thing with David Ojabo. David Ojabo and George Karlaftis are really big names who played really well a lot of the time, but I just don't love kind of so much what they bring. I'm actually looking at some guys a little bit later at edge who might be there, like in the second round. I'm looking at Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State, one of my top guys. I think he's a total stud. Drake Jackson is another guy at edge who I think would be a fantastic fit with the Packers. If you're looking at linebacker, Devin Lloyd, I think, is the guy. Would be super, super stoked to get him, or even Christian Harris. One of those two guys would be super fun to have there next to Devondre Campbell. Keep Chris Barnes in the rotation. I think he still gets a lot of snaps. You look at how many snaps Ty Summers and Oren Burks got last year. It was still like 300-400 snaps apiece. So definitely still a role for Chris Barnes, but I think you feel a little bit more comfortable with having him be your third guy. And then safety, I think, is the one that gets me the most excited. And the kind of cool thing for me is that I'm not real big on the top safeties in this class that everybody else is super enamored with. I kind of like the guys who are kind of projected as like back of the first, early second guys a lot more than, say, Kyle Hamilton or Dax Hill. And I know I'm probably pretty alone in that, but I'm looking at Lewis Seen out of Georgia and Jalen Petrie from Baylor. Those are two of my top guys. I'm over the moon about either one of those. I think that, and I was actually just talking earlier today with a college football writer for CBS who really specializes in Baylor. He attended Baylor and covered them for a while. And he was talking about Jalen Petrie. And he mentioned that Petrie has experience playing the star defender for Baylor. And I'm like, hey, Joe Barry's got a star role here. And he was putting Adrian Amos there a lot of the time last year. And the Packers seem like they want to move on from Adrian Amos. I am not ready to yet because I still love him, but he's getting up in there in age, and the Packers seem like they're not going to give him an extension. Petrie makes a lot of sense to me. He's real versatile, real athletic, and he's got experience at these different positions, including that star role. Oh, man, it seems like a match made in heaven for me. Especially, I would say, if he's there in the second round for one of your picks, I think they have to take him.
Talk about your podcast again, though, JJ. Do you have a special episode coming out draft related? Are you going to be live during the draft? What do you have coming up?
Yeah, so we have on draft day over at Packernet, we're going to do a live stream. I don't know if we're actually allowed to talk about this yet, but I'm going to do it. We're going to have a few of us guys over there. So Ryan Schlipp, the Pack Daddy, he's kind of the head honcho over there. He's going to be there for at least a little while. Clayton Bailey is a new addition to our team who hosts Packers Total Access. I know he's going to be doing it. And we also just added a brand new NFL draft coverage show. Their first episode just dropped earlier this week. And so I think it's called It's Always Draft Season. They've only done one episode so far, so I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. Some good guys there. So I think we're all going to do like a joint live stream and kind of cover the draft as it's going down on at least the first day. That's going to be just a super fun time. And
we had Ryan on, Mr. Daddy. We had Ryan on. He was terrific.
Yes.
So
super smart guy.
I keep reaching out to everybody through Twitter. So, as you talk to these guys, let them know, hey, these GBC podcast guys are okay. They can all jump in on one of our episodes to legitimize our show anytime they like.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll let them know. And then tomorrow, April 6th, I'm releasing an episode where I got an interview with two different guys. One is Shahan J. Raja, who's the Baylor guy I was mentioning, who writes for CBS. He's going to be on to talk about all the Baylor prospects in this draft. So there's Jalen Petrie. There's also Tyquan Thornton, the wide receiver we mentioned kind of at the beginning of this segment. And then later on the show, I'm going to have Coach Brian Hahn of McFarland High School in Wisconsin. Super smart dude. And he was breaking down a lot of the offensive line prospects, especially some of the guards, and then the top three tackles that he really likes as fits with the Packers. So those are two fantastic interviews with some dudes who are way smarter than me. So go check that out on, you're going to search for Packernet Podcast in any podcasting app. And it's going to be one of the episodes labeled Cheese and Packers.
Excellent.
Sounds great. That sounds really exciting.
And your information is also available on your Twitter page. Before we let you go, one of the other things we talked about is the world's largest trivia contest that's coming up April 8th, 9th, and 10th, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. You can listen to it on the radio or on webcast. If you have TuneIn Radio, WWSP is the radio station to find it at. I actually have two trivia questions for you, JJ, and I decided to throw them Packer related to you. I know Neil and Jeff know these answers, so they maybe they'll throw you a lifeline if you need it. All right. What is the address of Lambeau Field?
Okay. I know this. Give me a second. It's is it 1265?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Keep going. What street?
1265 Lombardi Avenue.
Correct.
Oh,
very good.
Thank God.
Here's the tough question. All right. In 1957, when New City Stadium was being built, what was the name of the street that the stadium was being built on?
All right. I need to phone a friend who's the oldest person in this call.
Because clearly it wasn't Lombardi Avenue.
Right.
Jeff, you should remember this one. Do you remember?
It was
it Highland Avenue?
Yes.
No. Oh, was it Highland? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Neil pulls it out. Highland Avenue. Good job. And that one we got from my mom. My mom had to tell us the answer to that one. When we were researching that one.
Because Oneida, obviously it wasn't. And Oneida was one of the streets as well, which it's still on. But it was the cross street.
And the farm actually is on Ridge Road. The farm house sat there on Ridge Road for the longest time. And shared, the parking lot was part of that farmhouse.
Well, it was a working farm for a long time. Yeah.
All right. You guys, anything else?
I should remember a lot of these street names from driving up and down looking for freaking parking everywhere. I'm trying to get in the game.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Highland you don't see anymore, but next time you're in town, I always go north. I go about 5-6 blocks north to Liberty Street, Liberty, park on the road. Nice, easy. But you were at a game this last year, right?
Yep. I attended the Vikings game at Lambeau, which went a heck of a lot better than the Vikings game at US Bank Stadium. Holy moly. That was just fun. Just watching them just beat up on the Vikings for 60 straight minutes. But it was bitterly cold. It was so cold. This is the game that they were talking about on TV about, is this going to be the coldest Packers game ever on record? And it ultimately didn't hit that. But I will say that so my wife and I were there together, and our food and our drinks were freezing before we could get even halfway through them.
So you're a real fan.
We've all had that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, when alcohol freezes, or your beer or your soft drink freezes, you know it's pretty damn cold.
I just, you talk about beer freezing. The Packers 2007 NFC Championship game against the Giants, right? We were tailgating, and I had a bottle of beer, drink a beer, put it down, start talking to my friends, cousins, whatever. Go like a minute later,
no beer.
It was frozen. Yeah, it was remarkable.
That's exactly what it felt like for us. My wife bought a hot pretzel, and she took one bite of it, and she went to get her second bite, and it was frozen solid.
So do you have any road trips planned for the upcoming season?
You know what? I think that's so we got two things to think about here. One is obviously what's going to be the best game to go to.
Mm-hmm.
But two is my wife and I are expecting our first child.
Congratulations.
In August. So
okay, so like,
all right,
travel is not on your plan this year, but congratulations
around
on that.
Time is when I can maybe make a decision about maybe I could do it, but absolutely at this point in the year I cannot make commitments for when I could go to a game.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time you come to Green Bay, whether it's a game or anything else, reach out to us. We'll tell you some hot spots to hit for future road. We're ideally looking to go to the Buffalo game in Buffalo this coming season. So that's the road trip that we're looking to take. But
I think that'll be the last Packers game in that stadium. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the new taxpayer money, $850 million.
Hey, fortunately, there's no Wisconsin or Michigan taxpayer money going to that one. Just the good true. People of the state
of New York.
Yep. Guys, anything for JJ before we let him go?
I just have a quick question. So with Rodgers, call it with the window closing or whatever, as he gets older, and with the trade of Devontae Adams and everything, do you think that this is kind of a make or break draft for the Packers? I mean, you could argue all of them are, right? But I mean, there's some different things, and with this draft, more picks, higher picks typically. I mean, do you really think that this is really going to hinge on success over the next 5 or 10 years? What happens in a couple weeks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think anytime you have this many early first round picks,
don't F it up.
Yeah. I'll just say that, this is your biggest opportunity to build a massive impact on, like you said, the next 5-10 years of this team. And I'll just say, if you hit on like 3 or 4 of those first 4 picks, I think that's going to be massive. And especially, man, if you invest in some of those positions like offensive line, I mean, look, nobody wants to talk about drafting another quarterback, but maybe, I'm just saying, like, those are the kinds of positions that have that long lasting impact. I think offensive line is probably the area where you have the most room to improve the team. Everybody's talking about wide receiver, and I don't deny that it's important, but I just think that you can push move the needle even further on offensive line that you can with wide receiver. That's just my 2 cents.
Right. Thank you.
Well, Neil, right? If you don't have a good offensive line, you're not going to have a quarterback who's going to be upright long enough to throw to the receivers anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everything starts up
problem
front
all season. So
yep.
There's only 2 things you can do on offense: run and pass. Kind of hard to do either one without an offensive line. And I will say, the last 3 playoff games that we lost, I think that we lost because of our offensive line. I can't point to a single one that you can convince me had anything to do with the receivers.
Yep, agreed.
Right.
Good point. JJ, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on your webcast or your podcast as well.
Thank you very much
for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And as we mentioned to JJ, when he comes to Green Bay next, he can contact us and we'll tell him places to hit. And that is an open invitation for anyone. You can find us on Twitter and on Facebook and on YouTube. Just look for Green Bay Chat at Green Bay Chat. Shoot us a message. We will tell you some places to hit in Green Bay. We'll talk about Heritage Trail, some of our favorite restaurants, but unfortunately, a longstanding tradition of Green Bay, a place called Chili John's. Jeff and I were we were sort of there because Chili John's as a restaurant changed ownership.
Doesn't exist.
They changed ownership, but then the new owners didn't what's the word I'm looking? They failed to. They breached the contract. They weren't allowed to continue to use the name Chili John's, so they're Chili J's. The recipe is still, for the most part, the same, but now Chili J's is going to close, and the spot that they're in is going to become a different restaurant. It's going to be a buffet. But this update from the Green Bay Press Gazette from January. So the owner of Z Best Foods, the person who really owns the Chili John's franchise, Daniel Haney, kind of won the lawsuit that he gets to keep the name, gets to keep the rights to franchise it, gets to keep the secret recipe. They are looking for someone else to take over Chili John's, which is good news because now I don't have to change my, career and retirement plans and open Chili John's without the H and using my mom's recipe for Chili John's chili.
There you go. So if they were smart, they would like put their store, not in a strip mall, way the hell out and gone.
Yeah.
Put it next to a bunch of bars, because let's face it, that's when you want chili, right?
Get
Late
it
night.
back on the strip on Oneida near
Exactly.
They did have a location. The original Chili John's did have a location in Lambeau Field briefly when the new atrium went up, which was good, but the spot on Military Avenue is not there anymore. So we're hoping that the true Chili John's, original Chili John's, does open again. But Jeff, you were in town. We ate there. It was delicious. We went to the pro shop. You got a nice new jersey. You're sporting that.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So not only at Chili John's do they serve chili, but they also serve that fantastic Wisconsin staple, booyah. So I had a bowl of booyah and a cup of chili, and it was all good.
You had booyah at Chili John's?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done that before.
I had neither. That's why I was like, what the hell?
He wanted to go to the right place, but really it was
well,
crap.
actually the Saturday night, then I did go to the right place to get the carry out booyah too. So I had, booyah Saturday lunch and Saturday dinner. So
nice.
Quintessential Wisconsin meal times.
I have to say, with the Chili John situation, though, right? I mean, it's unfortunate that John Madden is dead, but it's probably good at some level that he's dead, because this might have killed him, knowing that Chili John's disappeared, given his love of Chili John's. So,
well, we've been running long, so there's a few things that we typically like to do. We have our Packer player of the past. We have Jeff's long-winded Packer history bedtime story.
Easy.
We're gonna bump those out for 2 weeks from now. But Neil, give us a teaser on what's coming up on our next episode of Packer Player of the Past.
We're certainly looking at the given that it's draft time, we're looking at the 1938 draft and the first pick of the Packers in the 1938 draft, and talking about a career that could have gone longer as far as potentially great Packers quarterbacks who maybe stopped a little too early.
And then regarding the draft, I have lots of very, very early draft factoids from the first draft per se, February 8th, 1936, to the first common draft in 1967, March 14th and 15th. So some lots of information there, kind of why it even happened, and lots of interesting information. But I will tease with this. So we're gonna talk about drafts, successful drafts, not so successful drafts. So we were talking about this.
It sounds like we're going to be punching ourselves in the nuts a lot.
Repeatedly. Yeah, and that's why I asked JJ, seriously, looking back at these drafts, it's really, and other teams too, the blunders, the stupid fuck ups that were done.
Jeff, it's obvious your mom doesn't listen to this podcast.
I was just thinking, boy, I get to wrap this up saying, Neil, we get to tell the Barbs that we did not swear at all in this episode.
Come on. We got at least one F-bomb. Come on. It's all not always me either.
It's all
right?
yours.
Yeah. So anyway, all the different, draft day scenarios, issues, and things like that. I'll throw one out there. So Packers obviously had huge successes, 20s, 30s, 40s, early 40s. Then they started to decline, 40s into the 50s. So a lot of it was due to really bad drafts. One of their worst, arguably not the worst, probably we can come up with some worse ones, sadly, but I'll just throw this out there. Yeah. Thank you, Neil. Yes, repeatedly. Was a gentleman who was picked in 1949 in the first round by the Packers, 8 games ish out of 12. He completed 26 of 106 passes attempted. That's a blistering 24.5% completion rate. He had 14 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, and was waived before the start of the next season, 1950. So the draft is not everything, but it does really help to jumpstart and supply your team with quality players.
Or jump back in the case of taking a quarterback in the first round who stinks.
Again and again and again and again. So that's teaser for 2 weeks from now with the draft coming up. Maybe we'll have another guest, who knows, and we'll reveal who number 17 is in that picture.
Well, certainly we'll have a couple episodes leading up to the NFL draft and maybe even talk about what the Packers might do with that, because it'll be after Easter, Neil. Lent will be over. You can then mock draft on the next show.
With a clear conscience, yes.
You're actually going to have to do some research and actually find a name that you could even just say, hey, I like this guy's name. We're gonna make Neil pick a guy that he wants the Packers to draft. All right,
John, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. So
there, see, I'm not the only one now either.
No, now we got to tell your mom's upset with you now as well. Not to mention the not knowing the Marx brothers. All right. All right. Get information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat on Twitter and on Facebook at the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.